You know, they say that the first 4 years of someone's life, you learn how to be loved. In our culture, you're not raised by your parents. You're raised by your aunts and uncles and your cousins. We didn't have a lot of toys. We didn't have a lot of things. Even food was a concern sometimes, but there was a lot of love. My father was a Korean War veteran. Before they knew what PTSD was, he would wake up from sleeping and think he was in war and pull out knives on my mom. And looking back now, I'm realizing that before we knew what PTSD was, they just thought Indians were crazy. I remember my cousins were yelling at Red Rover, send Pee-wee on over. That was me. I was Pee-wee. And I remember running across the field and trying to break through the line and it turning into a dog pile and everybody laughing and all that kind of stuff. And then the caseworker showed up. All my cousins started crying. I was like, why are you crying? Like, I didn't understand what was going on. And I remember saying, you know, it's okay. We're going someplace where there's toys. I didn't even know what toys were. My older brother and I were in the way back of a Volkswagen Bug. I remember looking in the mirror of the car and I saw these beautiful, kind eyes looking back at my brother and I. Those kind eyes said, you two are really lucky, you know, you're going to a really good home, which was really confusing when the beating started.
Data shows that Native children are disproportionately represented in foster care. A Native kid is 4 times more likely to be in foster care than a Caucasian child. Child welfare governments were coming in. They go onto the reservation. They will see Native kids running around. They will assume that nobody's watching them. They'll swoop them up, and they actually call it the swoop era. They will swoop them up, put them in their child welfare cars, and they will drive away. That child will never have connection to their community again. They'll adopt them out. They'll change their name. They'll cut their hair. They will essentially make them white.
I have been a foster parent in Clark County for 2 years. I've fostered girls aged 3 to 18. As a foster parent, you see all the sides. You see the government agency, you see the biological parent, and you see the foster child. And you see imperfect system trying to do a good job, but not quite getting there. There was one woman who had a really negative experience with CPS growing up. And so her response was, you're joining like the dark side. Like you're joining a group that has historically hurt this community. You have to understand that there's a deep pain there. Maybe there was a mother or an aunt who was negatively, unfairly treated by CPS. And that's something that she's grown up with and that's impacted her. And then at the same time, there was another woman in the group who was excited that a Black person was going to be involved in the system. And so she said, kids might like being at your house. So it's a mixed feeling, but you have to understand the pain and the opportunity.
The system, I think we all know this, our system is really built by white people for white people. And I think that that is innate, it's built, that's just what it is. And so as much as we can break that down, I think is more how we're gonna see communities of color build themselves up.
We know that historically, people who report kids to CPS have been primarily Caucasian, and minorities are more highly reported. So we have to look at that also within the lens of stigma and bias. If teachers or therapists don't feel comfortable talking to me about my parenting style or what their concerns are, they're more likely to call CPS and report me rather than having a conversation about their concerns. And if you look at my skin color and you determine that even subconsciously, based on media images, based on past experience, that you associate more with criminality, then that criminality needs to be controlled. So you're more likely to report me for something, to call an authority figure, rather than having a conversation with me and getting to know me as a person.
Let's bring it back to the basics. Why is this child coming to our attention? Why is this child then, are we involved with this child even further than just like assessing the family? And what can we do up front to prevent the need for removing an Indian child from their biological family, from their tribe, from their communities, and from their culture?
First of all, the book that determines what makes a good parent and what makes a parent that's struggling can be based on the person who wrote the rules. And when you read the rules that DCYF has to follow, it's very obvious that was written most likely from a Caucasian perspective.
In my experience, children are primarily placed with non-native placements. They're losing their parents in a sense. They're also then losing the food they eat, the music that they listen to, the different traditions, so such as going to powwows or having ceremony when a relative passes away. I think that it's traumatizing. It just perpetuates that generational trauma.
So kids that are traumatized in foster care, that are having a hard time dealing with their identity as they are placed in homes that are unintentionally racist, their identity is challenged. And if they on any level hear the phrase, "Don't be Indian anymore," subconsciously or consciously, that message is put out. What the soul of that child hears is "don't be."
So I'm a foster parent. My husband and I have been fostering for 4.5 years. It's really important for Black kids to see themselves and to be able to know that, yes, I'm in the system, but yes, I can rise out of the system. It doesn't have to hold me back. It doesn't have to keep me down. I can still be what I want to be. And if I want to be a foster parent when I grow up, I too can do that. And also just to see themselves in just represented in social workers, to see themselves represented as clinicians and therapists and in all of the other areas that they may receive care. To me, it's really important that they see that just because they're in the system, it doesn't mean that it has to hold them down.
I was in the foster care system since I was like 6 or 7, and I aged out when I was 19. My foster family that I stayed growing up with from age 9 to about 16, we were kind of religious in a sense, and my family wasn't really like that. But at the same time, in ways we were kind of similar because we were both Black. Both my families were Black. My foster family and my biological family are both Black. So that was one thing that really helped me.
Unfortunately, we really have a lack of Native American foster providers. So becoming a part of a system that was already built to kind of be against you as a person of color is a hard thing to do. There is a lot of mistrust in the government in general, and that is 100% understandable.
I liken it to a Black person becoming a police officer. It's like you have to respect the community you came from and recognize that there's been harm done, but you also have the opportunity to work within the system to exact change.
There are kids out there that need us. You need foster parents who care, foster parents who are committed to them having the very best lives that they can possibly have.
You have the opportunity to be a voice, to have kids in your home and support them, but also at the same time, you have to be acknowledged that the system isn't perfect.
I would just say that it's not for everyone, and that's okay. But in order to build up our Native communities and to keep our Native communities connected, and for us not to lose our traditions, and for us to be able to continue to have generations of passing down things, we've got to step in.
If you're going to help, get training, but don't let the lack of training stop you. But get training. Understand what it is to be in the presence of someone who's been traumatized. Understand what it is to be fully present, authentically, fully present to someone else's trauma.
You have the opportunity to be a voice.
And it's worth it. And the kids are, this sounds cliche, but they are the future.
I have hope. I have hope for not just the foster care system. I have hope for democracy. I have hope for my grandchildren. I have hope. All it takes is just a little bit of love. If I can love someone, then I have hope. And given what I've endured, and that I still have the ability, the capacity to love, yeah, I have hope.